and welcome to this week's Rambling Thoughts of the Week. Um, just a real chance for me to put some random thoughts out there for people who are interested in my opinions. I am quite an opinionated person, and quite frankly, I'd like to share some opinions and see what other people think about what I think. This week, I wanted to focus on something that has cropped up a few times on social media, and it is um, basically where the classic car movement is actually going in terms of its future longevity. Now, I am really into classic cars. That is not for. I think I represent quite a minority of people under the age of 30 who are actually properly interested in classic cars, and when I say interested, I mean interested in owning one. I think there are many young people my age who think they are absolutely cool. Anything pre 90s, sort of post 60s, I'd say 1960, late 50s would be your earliest. Anything to the 90s is cool, really cool. And anything 90s is actually very cheap and very obtainable for any person to get hold of these days, which is why they're probably going to go up for. I think 90s modern classics are definitely going to be worth a lot more than what they're worth now. And I think noughties classics are going to go the same way, depending on what cars they are. But most people under the age of, I don't know, probably 35 haven't shown too much of an interest in actually owning a classic. But will obviously, they like them because they look cool, they sound cool. But the difference between them and the ones that want to put their hands in their pockets is exactly that. Owning a classic car and getting into the classic car world is not easy, and it's something that you have to want to do a lot. And when I mean you want to get into the classic car world, that means not really having too much of an interest elsewhere. And what I mean by that is, if you're the sort of person that wants to save up for the next holiday abroad in the sun, I would start suggesting that you cut back on that if you really want a classic car. And I know that's going to like start all sorts of, oh no, I can do both. Well, if you can afford to do both, then that's absolutely fine. And I don't think you'll have any issues in getting a foothold buying a classic car and maintaining one, which I will come to in a second. The biggest issue for me in terms of classic car ownership and encouraging young people to take up classic car ownership, it's simply one, the price. A lot of classic cars are beyond the means of the desirable ones are beyond the means of most working class people. And even some of the less desired cars are starting to become really, really valuable. Now, classic cars becoming valuable is not a bad thing. I think everybody who owns a particular marquee, a particular type of car, will want their cars to be more valuable. Therefore, people will start wanting to look after them. Mark 1 Focuses are in that group at the moment. I wish they were worth more than what they are because they are cheap. They are too cheap for what they are. And because they're cheap, you get a certain type of person who doesn't want to look after them. They want to buy them and then not look after them um, and run them into the ground as such. Now, I hope that every single one of my people, one of my subscribers who watch my videos, will watch my videos because they own one or want to own a Focus Mark 1 and they haven't yet bought one and want to basically fix it up. They want to know what can go wrong with them and how to go about fixing them up and preventing problems. And that is all about what I've been doing so far on this channel. So I hope that I've got the right audience that I respect and the audience that will love my videos. I don't really have much to say for people who buy them to run into the ground. You know, I understand why people do it. It's Bangonomics, but just go to another car. These are not Bangonomic cars for very long now, and quite frankly, they shouldn't be used as such. And many cars have gone through that transition now, and they are now established classic cars. Even your 80s Austins, like Austin Metros, Maestros, Montegos, the whole shebang, um, they up to about 5 years ago, they were still pretty cheap, and even today they can be a little bit too cheap. But because of how rare they are and how difficult to get parts of them they tend to end up as specialist cars now, where most owners are part of a club or already part of a club, um, and have got some good contacts to keep these cars on the road and identify them as what they are. They are a disappearing classic that a lot of people are now hunking over, want to own one now because of nostalgia. And nostalgia is the biggest, most powerful thing in the classic car world. Um, so there's see, you've got your 70s classics that are attainable, but only obtainable if it's not really desirable. I think a Triumph Toledo is actually quite a nice buy, and because it's not a Dolomite, it's quite cheap. I saw one the other day for just over £3,000 in really good condition. There doesn't appear to be much rot on it at all. In fact, it's just a few scabs. That would be my sort of car. And that's the sort of price that I would actually be very tempted to buy it if I had the money. So there's your 70s cars. Your 80s cars are just booming. Booming. All the best ones are gone. They're like 10 grand. Peugeot 205 GTIs, 10 grand. MG Metros, 5 grand, maybe. I might be wrong about that. It might be a bit less. Maybe more. I don't know. All the desirable cars are gone. It is beyond the reach of most people. Unless you have £10,000 knocking around and you could just, yep, I'll buy a car. I'm afraid in this day and age, with the cost of living crisis and a load of other things that are going on in this world at the moment, not just this country, people are really differing as to whether they really need to do this. Like, if you love cars and you love classic cars, then I would say go for it if you've got the finances now. You may not have the finances later down the line, but then we're always very good in terms of adapting what we do. And I think that's the best thing about people, is that we do, if you do your maths correctly and you look long term with these things, they do work out in the end. And the P6 worked out for me. But you've got to watch the pennies. You've got to be very careful about how much money you want to delve into these cars to maintain them. If you're restoring a car, that's a completely different story. This is purely about buying and getting into the classic car market. The other issue with young people, and this is something that I personally feel absolutely no issues in sharing, is that I rent. If any of you know, I mean, I'm sure some of you can relate to what I'm going to say now. As someone who has been trying for many years to try and get a good house deposit together, it is practically impossible to buy a house in Birmingham without two incomes. So you and a partner, there has to be two of you. It's not possible on a single person unless you want to buy a flat, which is absolutely damn shite and needs all the work doing to it that needs be. It is pretty hard. It's a complete story in itself. But when you rent, you don't have the stability of someone who actually owns their own property, who may have a garage. That's another thing I'm going to come to. So parking can be an issue depending on how flexible your landlord is. I've got a good landlord, which is why I've been where I have for quite a few number of years. And because I have good housemates, I can park two cars on the driveway as they are at the moment. That will change very soon though. But that is a big drawback. You see, young people have got these two different choices to make. And it's what you want to do. The cost of buying a house is like, 10 times the average wage, something stupid like that, whereas 20 years ago, it wasn't. Getting a house was much easier. I know I sound like a millennial who's moaning about being caught up in generational rent, but these things are an issue in the modern day and age, and this is why young people are really struggling to get in the classic car movement, because quite frankly, they have got so many more priorities than buying a car that they're going to use maybe for shows. and occasionally drive out and keep it in a garage, which is another thing. Storage is such a big issue, such a big issue. um Getting a garage, I'm finding it really difficult. Now, I've got a few options, and I'm probably going to go with one within the next week, because my Focus is going to need a garage very soon. The MOT runs out at the end of this month, and I don't really want to be MOTing it immediately. My plan is the Rover could be working very soon, but it depends on when they cross over. Um, the work on the Rover is accelerating, I will tell you that. But that's another update for another day. So we've got the issue of storage, and if you don't have if you don't know somebody with a garage, you're often paying the standard rate of anything from £80 to £100, depending on the area. Maybe if it's London, 120 per calendar month for a standard sized garage. Okay, and that is difficult to obtain because there's an awful lot of people who are storing classics away, and there is only a limited supply of garages that we have. So if everybody wants a garage for their classic, it's going to be pretty hard, and the rents are going to go up, and then that's another cost on top of classic car ownership. If you have a house, if you own a house already, fantastic. You're already halfway there, because you're not. I mean, okay, you got a big mortgage to pay, and yeah, again, that in this time and day and age is having its own issues along with people who rent. But you have a bit more stability, and you know where you are. And you might have a house with a garage or big driveway. If you've got a driveway with enough spaces, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough of a solution for me. I mean, if I had a big driveway of my own, I would definitely buy some those Clark car tent. They're not car. They're like car tents. I can't remember what they're called now. There's another word for them. I don't know why I call them tents, but they are literally driving garages. They're just like material, but it's very, very strong stuff and very high quality. And that would be an ideal way of keeping weather and rain at bay, but not having a car cover that scratches your paint if you don't have a garage. So, the solutions that have been wiped out that I can't do because of the nature of the fact I rent. So you've got the storage solution, you've got the price, you've got the fact that also generational. I think there are bigger priorities. As I say, if you're a young person and you're looking to try and desperately get on the housing ladder, you are not going to have any income for anything like a hobby in classic cars. And I think there's an awful lot of young people who would love to jump into it. And I think some are going to have to rely on a little bit of a loan from a very nice mum and dad, because I certainly had a little bit of a hand there with my parents. My parents gave me a little bit of money to just get me over the line to get that P6. And because of that, I had such an amazing time. But not everyone has that support structure or finances, basically, to do so. It's just another thought. And then your 60s to, I think your 60s to 80s classics are the golden generation, because they seem to have come alive in the last 20 years. I think values have shot up and are as high as what they've ever been and probably will ever be. What we need is the values to start coming down, because I'm not being funny, I'd love an MGB. Despite the fact that they are high maintenance vehicles when it comes to the bodywork side. I've had a Rover P6. I was so blessed with that car. It was untrue. It was the ultimate first. It's not even a starter classic. I wouldn't say a P6 is a starter classic, but it gave me the biggest start when it came to classic cars, older cars, and the easiest start in terms of bodywork. It wasn't rotten. It was extremely well built. And I know from experience with the Focus, with other cars I've seen, MGBs are going to be the opposite. But I would still love one for the experience. And I'd buy one to own one for maybe a couple of years and then move it on. It's a common thing that people do. and I think people want to experience these cars, and they should be experienced. But biggest problem that I and many young people have is MGBs, unless they come without serious body rot, which would cost you a lot of money in welding if you don't know how to weld or do it properly, like myself at the moment, you're looking at £4.5 grand, £5 grand. Now, I do not have that sort of money just lying around. And a lot of classics from the 60s, 60s are everything that is 1960s and is in good condition that could be MOT'd with a few things to look at. You're looking 5, 6, 7,000 at least, maybe even more than that. And then you have 70s cars, which tend to be the more cheaper side. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's just the sort of vintage of cars that were around at that time. Austin Allegros are going really strong. They get good money. I would like one actually. I don't know why though. But they tend to accumulate around the sort of, you can be very lucky and get a 70s classic in really good nick for £3.5, maybe £4,000. That's what we're looking at. Rover P6s, if I had my old P6, I'd be selling it for double what I sold it for 3 years ago. Even the 4-cylinders seem to get at least £4 grand, something like that. V8s, not interested in them, and they're too expensive. Why would I want to pay a few £1,000s more for a P6 with a different engine when I can buy a 4-cylinder for a few £1,000s less? And honestly, you have a better driving experience. I've driven a V8 and I think they're heavy. They don't handle as well. They had to move the cross member forwards to they basically modified the base unit to fit the V8. That's how I'm not completely anti V8, but I just think the 4-cylinder P6 is the purest, and that's the end of that. So no doubt I'm going to get people saying, well, you're wrong about that. It's the greatest engine, all that. It's not. It's such an overrated engine. Such an overrated engine, the Rover V8. Sounds great. It's bloody thirsty though. And their breathing problems. Blimey neck, they have breathing problems. They gunk up like anything. I've never heard such problems with the 4-pot Rover engine. And then we have the final problem, and this is going to be very controversial. I have a small YouTube following, and as much as the first rule of when you're trying to grow a YouTube channel is not to alienate people from your channel, there is a small group of people that will be alienated by what I'm going to say now. That group of people, I can only refer to them as, I say a group of people, I'm going to put them in one box. They're not a collective group of people in a sense that they're an actual group of people that get together. But we're talking about individuals here who I can only class as the old boys brigade. And do you know what? My classic car experience as a young person who owns a classic was absolutely amazing in my P6 ownership. I met people from all walks of life and all ages. And do you know what? 90% of the time, I felt absolutely, totally comfortable and at home. It was an amazing experience. And I really do wish more young people could experience that. But unfortunately, there is a minority of the old boy enthusiasts. And when I say old boy, I'm afraid it is older car enthusiasts who think that young people should not be involved in classics. They drive around recklessly, wrecking cars. They don't know how to maintain cars. I've got no time and patience for them. This is a hobby where I can enjoy my hobby with people my own age group, and I have no intention of interacting or wanting to know young people who try to own classic cars. It's almost laughable. And that's what I experienced quite a few times on quite a few separate occasions. And sadly, it really did put a sour grape in my mouth, as you can probably tell from this video. But hey, and I will tell you now, I'm completely sober when I'm making this video, by the way. I don't drink when I make any of my videos. This is the honest to God truth of my experiences. This group are the ones that alienate young people. They're the sort of people you park next to at a show and you're there in your P6, you drive in, you park up. Me, young person, I was only 23 at the time, something like that. I parked next to this red Jaguar E-Type with this old man, this 80 up, he looked in his 80s. And because I was fractionally too close to his car, he said, you know, you're too close to my car, you could scratch it. You're young people, you need to learn to park. I said, excuse me? I couldn't believe the arrogance because I was parked next to his Jag. You know, because he's got a Jaguar E-Type, he thinks he's rich. He thinks he's absolutely up himself. And because he's there, he's up here, I'm down here, because I'm a young person with a bit of a battered Rover P6 with all these different different panels, a different shade of brown. It's definitely a bit more bog standard classic sort of, it's at the bottom end of the spectrum, put it that way. And it's little tiny things like that that get on your wick as a young person. Now, he does not represent the majority. As I said, this is a very small group of people. I reckon about 5 to 10% of the classic car movement. And these people really don't want young people involved in classics. They don't want you anywhere near them. I'm not suggesting that that man had that opinion, but it's your actions that portray feelings, and it makes people really alienated from the actual world of classic cars. I'll put it this way. When I was in the P6 group, the P6 movement, the community, I felt very much like I was inside the tent looking out at the people that didn't have a classic, saying, come on in. But sometimes, and very rarely, I would feel like I was outside the tent looking in at the old boys brigade. The people that really don't want young people to be anywhere near classic cars because it's their hobby, not mine. I think it's a very sad and sorry attitude. And do you know what? I hope to God I've not alienated anybody who would watch my channel, because quite frankly, I hope that all the people that watch my channel, they would absolutely understand where I'm coming from and maybe have had similar experiences. And that is the biggest off-putting factor when it comes to young people getting into classics. So we've got values, we've got the actual shift in what people like. So generally young people are going to be interested in 90s noughties stuff, not anything before. And then you have the cost of well, basically the cost of living, which is affecting everybody. So, you know, rent, mortgages, they all come first. Classic cars are on the back burner because it's an expensive hobby. Then you've got storage issues, trying to find good storage if you don't, because you've got to rent that as well. And then you have the slight issue that the classic car movement is a little bit of a rich man's hobby. And then I'll come to the final point, and probably the most relevant point about the classic car movement. In the last 15 to 20 years, there's been a significant boom to the economy based on parts manufacturing, you know, shows. People are literally spending huge amounts of money in the economy because of the classic car movement, and it's providing manufacturing and jobs in a lot of places. Money is changing hands a lot, and there are some powerful people in government who are into classic cars, which is, I suspect, one reason why your classic over 40 is tax and MOT exempt. I very much believe that. You need powerful people in Parliament to make these things happen, and it has happened. But one thing that is said by most young people that I've ever met who would love to get in the classic car world but can't because of various reasons that I've said previously in this video. There's one thing that runs through their heads. Classic cars, it's a rich man's hobby. I think that's a very incorrect statement in general. I don't think it is a rich man's hobby. I think it's very much somebody, it's a hobby that makes you really poor. It really is. It's a fantastic hobby, an enlightening hobby. You need to experience it, and it makes you very poor. But to get into it, do you need to be rich? Nah, you don't need to be rich. But I do think that the classic car movement is so over commercialized now that I think we need a bit of a backpedaling situation. It is very easy to go to a classic car show like the NEC Classic Restoration Show and see all these cars in the auction, because they'll do a live auctions there, whether it's the one in March or the one in November, the big show, and you've got the live auctions, and you see the sort of money being banned around for these classics, and you think, I'm out of my depth here. I'm seriously out of my depth. I don't have this financial power. I've got to be honest with you, neither do I, and most people don't. The sort of people that buy these cars are collectors. They're people who buy collectors' cars. They buy them because they have this money maybe from previous cars, or because they just have that income, and they buy it. They keep it nice, maybe drive it to the odd show or on the back of a trailer because they're trailer queens, and then they sell it on at the auctions again and they get another one. It gives you that impression that really it is a rich man's hobby. But that is a big problem, because no matter how much you say it, young people are still going to perceptively believe that the classic car movement is an old man's hobby, and it's a rich old man's hobby, and there's nothing you can get away from that. And I think there is a generational clash when it comes to young people and old people in the classic car movement. As I said before, I've had some really funny experiences. I mean, that's just one example. Parking up to a guy with a Jaguar E-Type, absolutely mint condition, is probably worth what my parents' house is worth. But the truth is, maybe you can misinterpret things. But all I can say is I was there, and I certainly felt that the guy wasn't particularly welcoming in the slightest. And I've had that a few times, and it is there can be some snobbiness within the classic car movement, and I think it's something people just try and avoid, and they try and stick to clubs that they share an interest with. And there are some amazing clubs where advice is shared, knowledge is shared, and friendships are made, and people befriend each other. And I am going to befriend a lot of people through these videos, and I'm hopefully to meet a lot of people, and that's what it's all about. So there are some negatives, but these are some main reasons why I think it's really hard for young people to get anywhere near classics at the moment. And I've been lucky to have that experience. Would I go back into it? Yes, but at the right price. I think classic car prices, particularly for 60s to 80s cars, have got to come down. I think 80s cars won't come down yet, but 60s, 70s classics, they've got to come down from where they are, because you're not going to get young people buying them. Let's face it, my generation in 20 years are going to be the main buyers of these classic cars, and there are not enough of us. I'm 29. There are not enough of us in now that are interested, that will want to buy one. So where's your future audience? Where are the future people buying these classic cars? I mean, there are other things that are putting young people off as well. We've got the whole generic issue of where the classic car movement is going because of the availability of petrol. I mean, petrol at the moment, luckily the government secured E5 petrol for another 5 years. Well, we're 4 years into that now. We've got another 3.5. Well, what happens after 3.5? Is it going to continue? It probably will, but there's a point where more people would have shifted away from petrol cars to electric, and then you're left with pretty much in 15 years, there will be very few people using petrol apart from people with classic cars. They're the only people that are going to use petrol. And that's only going to mean one thing. The cost is going to go like that for petrol. So in terms of hobby, I think young people are more or less questioning, is it sustainable as a hobby? I would say get in there now and enjoy it now. But this is just a really bad time economically to get into anything if it's financially expensive, which classic cars are. So I've rambled on quite a lot, and I hope to God when I upload this I don't watch it back and think I shouldn't have said that. But quite frankly, this is my thoughts of the week, and it is unscripted, unedited. It is exactly my thoughts, and I will leave you there with that. Now, there is some exciting news. If you've actually managed to stay awake, I mean, I will do another video, but coming up is the March Classic Car Restoration Show, which is at the NEC. It is literally, well, for me, I'm not going to drive. I'm not driving there. I'm getting the bus there, or I might get the train there, because quite frankly, I live close enough, and the parking is horrendous. It's like chopping your head off. It's that expensive. You might as well sell parts of your body to pay for the parking. The November one, don't even get me started on that. That's greedy. They're being greedy. Now, people say it's a bargain. I think it is a bargain for the amount of show you get. But if they keep hooking up the price during a cost of living crisis, again, you're alienating not just young people, but a lot of people. So the classic car world has got to kind of adapt a little bit, I think. But anyway, I'm going. Whatever the price is, it will be on the I'll go look at my diary. The 25th of March, which is not far from my birthday. So yeah, that will be a really nice video to film. I will definitely be going around with my camera. Hopefully I'll have some good quality sound, because my phone is going to be picking up all sorts of stuff. You're not going to hear my voice, so I'm going to have to do something about that. So that is March. I'll be filming that. I'll be filming like many people probably do these shows, but I'm sure it will show you my enjoyment and passion for classic cars, which I haven't really showed my audience as such. As I say, I have a Ford audience, I have a Rover audience. I'm a classic car person at heart. April the 15th is the Pride of Longbridge. Beatrix will be going as long as, well, she turns up on the day. It's like most of them. They either turn up or they don't. They want to start or not. But Beatrix will. She'll be there. And I hope to meet a lot of people some people who may have watched me. I'm just a tiny little insect compared with some of these channels. But I'm hoping a few people might actually come up to me, say hello, and I get to look at some amazing cars and try not to buy another car. And then the day after, coincidentally, I've got a ticket for a show organised by the MGCC ZED register. ZED, yeah, Octagon Register. It is a event at Whiffle Transport Museum. I think all the tickets have gone. I think they went literally within about an hour or two of the organisers putting up their free tickets. So I grabbed them while I could. Whiffle Transport Museum is an amazing place to go if you've never been and you're just interested in the history of transport. Amazing place, amazing family day out. I'll be going on the 16th and meeting a load of people from possibly more MGs, which will be quite interesting. So I might actually bump into the same cars 2 days in a row. So yeah, coincidental, it's the day after the Pride of Longbridge, so Beatrix will be busy there as well. In terms of anything after, I can't really tell you much after April, but I will try and see what Ford shows there are and see if I can get my focus out to shows in the summer. The plan is around April, or just after April, in May, the focus will be going to the body shop again to have another side resprayed, the passenger side. That is funds pending, but it will probably happen because I'm not happy with the car going to a show with the passenger side as worn out as it is. So I will leave you there. Thank you for joining me again, and thank you for subscribing and supporting the channel and listening to my somewhat controversial opinions. But hey, these things have to be said. If you have anything to add, please add in the comments what your opinions are of what I've said. Maybe you can add your own opinion about maybe why people are just struggling to get in the classic car movement. It is a big concern because the long-term future of the classic car movement is with my generation. Anyway, take care guys. I will see you very soon.